Let me start by telling you the name of the deck. The name of the deck is Dark Money. And what is Dark Money? You might be asking yourself. Taryn might be asking himself. You might be asking yourself. Well, Dark Money, popularized by the 2006 book by Jane Mayer of the same name, refers to political spending meant to influence elections or policy making where the source of the funding is undisclosed or difficult to trace. The lack of transparency makes it hard for voters like us to know who's behind political ads and advocacy or groups or other election-related activities. So why is dark money a problem? Well, for many reasons, but one of the most obvious is that when you elect representatives, you want to believe that they're going to represent you and fight for you. Yeah,
What?
I know, that's surprising.
That's crazy. You're talking
you
crazy.
You don't see a lot of that around here, but that's supposedly the idea. And as we know, that's often not the case.
You might say undemocratic.
Yeah, yeah. Right, John Fetterman? Because of the disastrous Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court, as you know, dark money is able to corrupt democracy by letting the wealthy and powerful manipulate politics in secret. Without transparency, voters can't make informed choices, and politicians serve hidden masters instead of the public. In keeping with that as a theme, my deck has an overstock of ramp pieces, and ways to make massive quantities of mana as quickly as possible to represent our vast wealth. And then we'll use our dark influence to turn our opponent's own creatures against them, much like our elected representatives are turned against the interests of those they're supposed to serve. And who is our evil hidden master? Our Charles Koch, our Elon Musk, our Rupert Murdoch? Well, thankfully it's nobody as evil as those three. It's just the Mind Flayer.
An angel in comparison.
Truly, yes. Yes, a saint.
All right, well, here we are with the CommanDorks gameplay, or not gameplay stream. Deck Techs, round 14.
Recording, yes, not even a stream, yeah.
Just a recording, not a... Yeah. I got this, don't worry. Okay, so, we've got the Grievous Wounds die here, so we're going to roll off to see who talks about their video first. It won't matter for you because you're going to see it after editing, but it matters for us.
And
so
it's our favorite way to determine who's going to go first in a in-person game, so this should work today. Oh,
jeez, really?
That's a great
full
start.
Body.
That's we consider that disintegration.
Oh
folks.
my god, well, here goes nothing. Left foot.
I think last time you rolled left leg, so or left hand maybe. So
yeah,
you're consistent. So the Mind Flayer is the core of my Dark Money deck. The Mind Flayer, just to give you a rundown, is named the Mind Flayer the Shadow. It's from the Stranger Things Secret Lair. If you're looking at the Universes Beyond version, his name is Arvinox the Mind Flail. He's a 9/9 black horror creature for 4 black. Mind Flayer the Shadow isn't a creature unless you control 3 or more permanents you don't own. At the beginning of your end step, you exile the bottom card of each of your opponent's libraries face down, and for as long as those cards remain exiled, you may look at them, you may cast permanent spells from among them, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. The intended bracket is 4th, which will be clear as I mentioned the game changers. They set it there, effectively. But if it's not clear at this point, the whole point of the deck is to generate a whole bunch of dark money, and then spend all of that to take my opponent's decks and use them against them.
Drink their milkshake. To
drink their milkshake, for lack of better parlance. So our game changers in this bracket 4th deck have 4, which,
4 for bracket 4?
4 for bracket 4. That seems like a fair, appropriate, reasonable number. I'm sure no one in the opposing video is going to have a drastically larger number than that. Yeah. Anyway, the 4 that I'm running are Opposition Agent, Turgrid, God of Fright, Ancient Tomb, and Bolas's Citadel. As far as piloting this deck, the bulk of the deck is devoted to 2 things, as I said: ramping mana and stealing things from our opponents. I believe 50 Cent called that "Get Rich or Die Tryin'." For best results, ramping mana should go first. Don't try stealing things if you don't have the mana. That's not going to work out for you. Game plan. I've got a lot of pieces here, but I'm only going to mention about half of them for now because some of them also kind of fit into some other categories that I think are appropriate to this Mind Flayer strategy and help to enable the clause of having 3 permanents that are from my opponents without having to necessarily rely on getting the Mind Flayer out first to get those cards. So I've got some other cards in the deck that can help me get some cards from my opponent's libraries in different ways. The first one I'll mention is kind of a protective piece, Cunning Rhetoric. This doesn't prevent my opponents from attacking me, but it does say that if they do, I exile the top card of their library, and then I can play that card. So just a little bit of an incentive or disincentive to try and keep them from attacking me. And if they do, then more options for me.
Notably, you or a planeswalker you control. So when you inevitably get one or more of my planeswalkers, it'll matter.
Yes,
then
absolutely. Yeah. Great. A couple other pieces I did mention as a game changer. Opposition Agent. Opposition Agent, if you don't know, is a flash creature that says when an opponent searches their library, if they would search the library, I could search their library instead and take something from it. So good anti-tutor tech, but also appropriate for Mind Flayer in that it's tying into our strategy. A little bit similar is a tutor, or as I like to call it, a uter, because it's Praetor's Grasp. It's a tutor that lets me tutor from target opponent's library, so search through and find exactly what they need, or the best thing in their deck, or most of them are going to have a Soul Ring, and I'm going to hit my ramp early game, so that's not so bad either. Just a solid option. Very similar to that is Varigoth Bloodsky Sire. Is a demon that has a boast ability for 1 and a black, so he has to have attacked during the turn, but then target player searches their library for a card and puts it on top. So I can do that to myself and get a little vampiric tutor for myself, or I can have an opponent do that, and if I've got my opposition agent, then it's just me choosing something for me. And
like being in the candy store.
Yeah,
that's funded by Dark Money.
It helps when you write the rules. You can find ways to break the rules for yourself. That's the fun one. Next one I'll mention is Intellect Devourer. This one I think I
Oh yeah. Intellect Devourer is a 2/4 horror for 3 generic and a black. It has Devour Intellect. When Intellect Devourer enters the battlefield, each opponent exiles a card from their hand until Intellect Devourer leaves the battlefield. And then it also has Body Thief. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards exiled with Intellect Devourer. If you cast a spell this way, you can spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. Love this creature from D&D.
Perfect.
So good.
Plus, I just love the art. It's just like a big old brain with like dog limbs almost kind of coming off of them. Creepy and very appropriate. So great for, 3 turns earlier than I could get out my Mind Flayer. My Intellect Devourer can be setting up that strategy so that it could hit the ground running potentially. Nautiloid Ship is another one that I think I've got.
Oh yeah, another one for me to read off. 4 generic. It's an artifact vehicle. So when it's a creature, it's got power toughness 5/5. Flying. When it enters, you exile target player's graveyard, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you may put a creature with exiled with it onto the battlefield under your control. Has crew 3.
So it's some targeted graveyard removal in that sense. So it's going to be good against a graveyard deck. Yeah. In particular, if for late game, it might be something where I even want to hold it a little bit longer to wait until that graveyard builds up. But can get quite a bit of value out of that as well. A couple more game changers here. I'm running Gary, or Grey Merchant of Asphodel, as he's more accurately called. It's just kind of as a late game closer. It's a mono black deck, so I've got a lot of things that have black pips. Despite the fact that the deck is very artifact heavy, it's still a solid enough closer that it's not one that's probably worth passing up, quite frankly. Another piece that's kind of a weird one, but fun is Crabomination.
Yeah, you gave that one to me this time around. Four generic and 2 black. It's a 5/5 Crab Demon. It has an ability Emerge from Artifact where it costs 5 and 2 black, but you can cast the spell by sacrificing an artifact and paying the Emerge cost reduced by that artifact's mana value. Also says when it ETBs, target player or target opponent exiles top card of their library, a card at random from their graveyard, and a card at random from their hand, and you may, cast a spell from among those without paying their mana cost. So,
so pretty solid. Going to get access to some more cards. Again, pulling some cards out of their hand as well, which is not bad. Boy, I think I gave you a whole bunch of these ones that are complicated right in a row here.
No, that's fine.
Brainstealer Dragon.
Yeah.
That's a 5 black dragon.
Yeah, 6/6 with a dragon horror. With flying. Beginning of your end step, exile the top card of each opponent's library. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you can spend mana of any, as though it were mana of any color. Whenever a non-land permanent an opponent controls enters the battlefield under your control, they lose life equal to its mana value. So basically a second copy of your commander. Slightly better because you can do non-permanents with that, right? Yeah.
Yes. And the fact that, I'm getting that additional, they lose the life, that helps me make decisions too as we start getting down to the low life totals. It's like, well, I can cast something from this person, or I can cast something that's just big enough to knock you out of the game. I like that as well. Elder Brain.
Yeah, Elder Brain, 5 and 2 black, so total 7, 6/6 horror with menace. Whenever it attacks a player, exile all cards from that player's hand, then they draw that many cards. You may play lands and cast spells from among the exiled cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. So
I like that one. It's letting me play the lands as well. The next one's going to be a little similar on that lands front, but Mind Flayer only lets me cast permanents, but it only cares about me controlling permanents. So while I can't play lands with Mind Flayer, if I get lands that are my opponent's lands in any other way, they still count towards activating my Mind Flayer's creature self. And the last one that also kind of ties into the lands is Herald of Leshrac.
Yes, Herald of Leshrac is a 2/4 avatar with flying. It'll cost 6 and a generic. Cumulative upkeep. Gain control of a land you don't control. And it gets a +1/+1 buff for each land you control but don't own. And when it leaves play, the opponents, they get their lands back. So, yeah, really good.
I like that one. Cumulative upkeep, it's only one land the first turn, so they may not get rid of it right away. But if it lasts another turn, then it's 2 lands the next time that you get to take. And it's just going to keep growing. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm also running Urborg Debalcoffers in here, so when I'm getting those extra lands, they're still going to definitely be profiting me substantially, not to mention the fact that I can spend mana as though it were any color for a lot of these. Quick break here. Obviously, this video is in conjunction with Terran's video as well. We're doing kind of a villains theme this time. So I've got my Dark Money deck, and he's got his Super Villains deck, which is a play on Super Friends with a Nicol Bolas Planeswalker, back at MDFC Planeswalker. I guess Planeswalker on
transformation.
Yes, transforms. If you're enjoying this video and you want to be informed for our next stream and you want to know what is going to be facing off against my goofy Dark Money deck, you should definitely check out Terran's video, which we'll be recording here shortly, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Link will be in the description below.
Yeah. Probably more important than the actual stealing, as I said, got to do our ramping first. We want to be able to afford stealing these pieces from our opponents. So, to go through those here rather quickly, I do have about 31 pieces of what I would consider ramp in the deck. I realized very quickly when I was building this that the deck wants to be stealing from my opponents. And because my late game actions, I want to be devoting them to pushing all my mana into casting my opponent's things, I realized that I didn't need to devote nearly as many slots in my deck to a late game strategy. And that left a lot more spots open to just piling in extra ramp pieces, so that I was really consistent on that, and I could hit those every game, and I could be hitting big mana as early as I possibly can. The sooner I can get Mind Flayer on the board, the sooner I can start exiling at my end step, the bottom card from each opponent's library. It did hurt a little bit to lose the proxies of Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt in this deck, but I can still, and have still managed to get Mind Flayer out as early as, say, turn 3 or 4, and it can do quite a bit of work from there on out. And maybe even a little bit earlier if I got just an incredible God Hand. But moving right along, though, some of these ramp pieces. The first one I'll mention is Everflowing Chalice. It's a rock for 2x, so it comes into play with counters on it equal to where x is the number of counters. So if you get it really early and it comes out with 1 counter, that's fine. I don't really have Proliferate in the deck to try and take advantage of that, but where it becomes really nice is that I can cash in later after I've been doing the ramping and then take another leap ahead in my ramp. So it's like, if I don't have a lot of other good options, maybe I dump so that it's going to tap for 4 going forward, and
Sure.
then I'm solid because I can spend that for the most part as though it were mana of any color. So that colorless mana can do anything I'll need it to do. And that's
for
not
your
a problem.
stolen stuff. Yeah.
Next piece I'll mention is Lotus Bloom. It's kind of it's a suspend Black Lotus, effectively. So it's got suspend 3. So for 0, you suspend it, and then in 3 turns, it's going to the battlefield is a artifact that sacrifices for 3 mana of any one color. Also running Soul Talisman, not to be confused with Soul Ring.
Yeah, I got that
Also
right here.
suspend, yeah.
Yes, so no mana cost, suspend 3, and you got to pay a generic 2 suspend it. But yeah, each upkeep's going to lose a time counter, and then when it's in play, it taps for 2, just like a Soul Ring.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Alongside Soul Talisman, we're running Dark Ritual, pretty classic black mana ramp. Sorcery speed, or is it sorcery speed or is it instant speed?
It's instant.
Instant speed, even better. Pay black mana, make 3 black mana. Pretty fantastic when my commander has 3 black pips. Can make for a good way to get that early game. Soul Ring, obviously. Soul Ring's pretty self-explanatory to have a Soul Ring in here. I'm also running a Wayfarer's Bauble, which sacks to get a basic onto the battlefield.
Bobble.
Arcane Signet. A Charcoal Diamond is a tapped rock that makes black mana. Cold Steel Heart is a tapped rock that will also make black mana. Dream Devourer I consider to be basically ramp. I like this because it spells on layaway. You're able to make a down payment of 2 mana of any color, and then they're ready in exile to cast when you are ready for them on a future turn. Plus, then those cards that are in your hand, they're discard proof. They're not going to be disrupted. They're not going to fuel a Jeska's Will because you've gotten them out of your hand.
Yep.
So I like that. It does kind of feel like ramp because there's often times where you can cast things earlier than you would have been able to. I'm also running Jet Medallion for 2 mana. It's an artifact that just says my black spells are going to cost 1 colorless less. I'm also running Lotus Blossom.
Oh
yeah.
I got that guy here. Yeah, it's an artifact for just 2 generic, and beginning of your upkeep, you can put a petal counter on it, and at any point you can tap and sack it to add X mana of any color, any one color, where X is the number of petal counters it had. So
perfect.
Yeah,
so
good.
Great to get that one down early. Just let it start accruing some value until you're ready to cash it in and blow out. Drop that Mind Flayer or something else big and scary. Mind Stone, another 2-drop mana rock that makes colorless mana and can be sacrificed for a card later. Ornithopter of Paradise is a flying dork 0/2 that taps for any color. Commander Sphere is a 3-drop rock that I can sacrifice, to draw a card. Palladium Myrrh is a dork for 3 that taps for 2 colorless mana. Vessel of Endless Rest is a really great one in this deck that I would also say is kind of a part of our game plan. It's a mana rock for 3, and when it enters the battlefield, it taps for 1 of any color. And when it enters the battlefield, you take target card from an opponent's graveyard and put it on the bottom of their library. So it's really exactly what it's doing, is it's letting me choose something that they've already cast and used to be exiled with my Mind Flayer trigger on the end step. So that's going to be just fun to get something perfect out of a graveyard.
Be a Jeska's Will.
Could be a Jeska's Will. Hey, I like that idea. after that, I've got Cryptghast in here. It's a 4-drop. He's got Stort, Riffraff, Cryptghast. He makes all of my swamps tap for an additional black mana, so that's nice. I'm running Defiler of the Flesh. It's a 2 black creature. Effectively, it lets me cast my black permanent spells. I can spend 2 life instead of 1 of the black pips, so basically making 1 of the black pips into a Phyrexian black pip. And it also says whenever I cast a black permanent, I can give target creature I control +1/+1 and menace. So a little bit of evasion and pump is nice as well. A few more. Joyra's Familiar is a 4-drop flying artifact creature that says my historic spells, so that's artifacts, legendaries, and sagas, are going to cost 1 colorless less. Geode Golem is a 5-drop. I like this guy. Kind of perfect for a really expensive commander. Geode Golem says he's a 5/3 with trample. It says when he deals combat damage to a player, you may cast your commander from the command zone without paying its mana cost. So I can save 7 mana on my Mind Flayer, and if I've already cast my Mind Flayer at least once, then I still get it without paying its mana cost. I just pay the commander tax.
Yeah, cost reduction of 7.
So pretty fantastic for that. Really Gilded Lotus is a 5-drop mana rock that taps for 3 of any color. Caged Sun is a 6-drop artifact that says that lands of a certain type, or lands that tap for a color of your choice, tap for an additional mana, and it pumps all of the creatures of that color by +1/+1. Nirkana Revenant is similar to Cryptghast in that it says whenever I tap a land and make black mana, I make an additional black mana. I think I can even pump that one. And then, of course, again, I wrote it down as Post-Citadel, but we know it's Bolas's Citadel. It's not really truly... Yes, especially when he's running a Bolas deck. I don't want to get that wrong and call it Post-Citadel. But I called it a ramp piece, even though it's not really ramp, but it's ramping cards onto the battlefield before they would be able to get out there.
Pseudo-cheating them in. You're paying life instead, but boy.
At that point, you might as well have cast it. And then as far as ramp pieces, I did mention a few other lands that are worth mentioning in this section as well. Ancient Tomb is effectively a ramp piece because it's going to tap for an additional mana, even though it burns me for 2. Cabal Coffers. As I said, I'm running an Urborg in here, so that plus Cabal Coffers makes a lot of mana. I'm running a Cabal Stronghold, which specifically cares about me having basic swamps, but even so, that can still make a big difference. Another piece, I think I gave you this one, Lake of the Dead.
Oh yeah, Lake of the Dead.
This is a proxy, to be clear, but this is a big evil Mind Flayer deck. It felt like an appropriate fit for
It's
you.
necessary.
Yes.
So if Lake of the Dead would enter the battlefield, sacrifice a swamp instead. If you do, put Lake of the Dead onto the battlefield. If you don't, it goes to the graveyard. It can tap for just 1 black normally, or you can tap it and sacrifice a swamp to add 4 black mana to your mana pool.
So it can be really aggressive, and part of the reason I don't mind is because I've got such a heavy artifact ramp package that I can afford to lose 1 land, and then know that, in a future turn, if I need that extra 3 mana, then, it's worth sacrificing a land for that extra mana.
There's the difference between winning the game and not. Might as well try to go for it,
Yeah.
Yep.
A couple more pieces that are in the land ramp portion here. I'm running a Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, which kind of ties into that same, it cares about my devotion to black pips, so the fact that I've got a commander that has 3 black pips as well, that's, I've got enough pieces in here that can make that pretty effective. As far as card advantage, this part is a little bit shorter, but that's mostly because as I've established with my game plan here, a lot of my cards are getting me cards already from my opponents.
And your commander is card advantage.
And my commander is card advantage in that effect. So I didn't need to devote as many spots in my deck to the card draw, but I still wanted to have a little bit to kind of grease the wheels a little bit. So the pieces that I'm running for that, Village Rites is a simple one. Black, instant speed, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. I've got some little things in here that could be worth sacrificing to that for the card draw. Running an Endless Atlas is good in a monocolored deck because it requires me to have 3 lands of the same name. So once I've got 3 swamps, then I can pay 2 and tap it to draw a card. My favorite, mono black card draw piece that I mentioned, and I've mentioned in so many videos already at this point. It's probably sounding like a broken record, but it's Keen Duelist. Keen Duelist is in here. And this one's fine. I've got a lot of big cost spells, and I've got a little bit of ways to manipulate the top deck. I did mention I had Varagoth in here, so I could potentially tutor something to the top of my library, knowing that I'm going to hit it with Keen Duelist next turn and get a good amount of extra life loss for an opponent on that as well. Another card that I think I left you to mention is Sign in Blood. You can read that one off.
Yeah, except you gave me a card with no text on it, just art.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to show off my one cool all-art card that I own.
But if I remember correctly, Sign in Blood, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life.
Correct,
right?
yes. Yeah. So just cool art. And that was mainly the reason I wanted to run it in my mono black deck. But yeah, best case scenario, well, any case scenario, either I'm drawing a couple cards that I need to draw, or maybe my opponent has 2 life and I can use it to take them out. I've seen it done, so, you know, hope springs eternal. Pilgrim's Eye, I'm considering that effectively card draw because it's a creature that ETBs and gets me a basic land. And then now it's a body, it's a flyer, it can block, it can be my village right sacrifice, that kind of thing. Yep. Siphon Mind is a piece that I like in that it's a 4-drop sorcery, 3 and a black, where each of your opponents discards a card, and then I draw a card for each card discarded this way. So that by itself is really strong, but then the fact that I'm running Turgid in the deck, having some of those things that are going to hit my opponents all is really, really, really good.
Oh, man. Oh.
So, yeah, Siphon Mind's in here for that. And then the last piece that I'm running as card draw, strictly card draw, is Stinging Study. That's an instant speed spell for 4 and a black, excuse me. And it says that you draw equal to your commander's mana value, converted mana value, and lose life equal to that same amount. So in my case, Mind Flayer is a 7, so I'm going to draw 7 and lose 7.
It's pretty good at instant
solid.
Speed.
Yeah, pretty solid at instant speed to rebuild or to really push you over the top. So that's our card advantage section here. As far as targeted interaction, go through these here. I'm running a Feed the Swarm, most commonly known as one of a couple of pieces of black enchantment removal. That's the main reason it's in here, but it can also hit a creature. Oubliette is a removal piece that phases out a creature for as long as it's on the board. And the real benefit I like of Oubliette is that it's a removal piece that adds to my devotion, so it's just going to help me with my Grey Merchant of Asphodel or my Nykthos Shining Nyx.
Nice.
Damnation is a pretty classic board wipe for mono black. Pretty solid, especially if maybe my commander is not a creature yet and I just want to clear some problems out of the way. Eradicator Valkyrie is an angel. It's got an ability, a boast ability, so it has to have attacked, but assuming that it does, I can pay 2 and sacrifice a creature to make each of my opponents sacrifice a creature. That also works pretty nicely with Turgid.
Yep. Or Planeswalker.
Or a Planeswalker, yes, thank you.
Relevant for my deck.
Yes, I do tend to forget that it says they have to sacrifice a creature or a Planeswalker. But considering that you will have more Planeswalkers than creatures, that'll maybe work to my advantage. Also, it has protection from Planeswalkers. That's just another bonus on that. So it's going to hopefully stay alive versus your supervillains.
Yeah, I don't like that one. Yeah. That's a problem.
We'll call that Scare Force 1.
Scare Force 1.
Let's see, what do we got here? Next off, after Eradicated Valkyrie, I'm running a Hagra Mauling, which is an MDFC sorcery removal with a land on the back, a tapped land on the back, and it costs 1 less if target opponent doesn't control any basics.
Yep.
Also running a Phyrexian Obliterator.
That's one for me. Yeah. So this guy costs 4 black pips, but he's a 5/5 Phyrexian Horror with Trample. It says, whenever a source deals damage to Phyrexian Obliterator, that source's controller sacrifices that many permanents. Ew. Get it out of my hand.
Some really good anti-blasphemous act tech.
Oh my god.
Because nobody wants to sacrifice 13 permanents. Again,
Yikes.
this one, it hits on a lot of fronts. It's a gross, nasty, mean card. So appropriate for kind of an evil theme.
Oh yeah.
But then, it's synergistic on the sacrificing. It's synergistic on preventing my opponents. They're not going to want to attack me, and so it's a deterrent in that sense. It's great on my devotion. It's 4 more black pips. And again, that sacrifice clause really ties nicely to if I should have turd grid on the board.
God.
It's just a good
just
fit.
do not damage it. Whatever you do.
Exactly. Just let it stay alive.
Man.
Let it hit you.
It forces us to play around it.
Yeah,
we got to play around it,
Next piece that this is a removal, but it also fits really nicely with my game plan, is Ritual of the Machine. Ritual of the Machine is a sorcery for 2 and 2 black. I have to sacrifice a creature, but then I gain control of target non-artifact, non-black creature. Yeah. So it's just a steal effect that can be really great for activating my commander. I mean, if it comes out and it's an enchantment and it's been around for a couple of turns, and I use something to get that third creature and it becomes a creature. Well, it doesn't have Summoning Sickness because it's been on the board that whole time.
Yep.
So, being able to just steal something, even like first main, that they weren't expecting, can be really strong. So it's effectively removal and part of my game plan. It hits on both sides of that. The last big piece of removal that I'll mention is Cloud Kill, which I think I left out.
Oh yes, you sure did. 4 and 2 generic sorcery. All creatures get -X until end of turn, where X is the greatest mana value of a commander you own on the battlefield or in the command zone. Really good.
Yeah, and X and 4 and 2 black. And the thing that's great about this is that because my commander costs 7 mana, but it's a 9/9 creature. Mm-hmm. So even if my commander is a creature, the Cloud Kill is never going to kill the Mind Flayer, but it's going to be really good at wiping out big token boards or whatever problem that I have currently at the table. So there's our targeted interaction. Some mass disruption pieces here. Most of my deck, again, as I've said, is a theft strategy, and a theft strategy effectively acts as mass disruption. I'm taking pieces that they would otherwise expect to be casting themselves, or are part of strategies or combos, and that's going to disrupt what they're doing.
Going to throw us off our rhythm.
Yeah, that kind of fit this. I mentioned Cunning Rhetoric as a deterrent for the attacks. I mentioned Phyrexian Obliterator also is effectively a deterrent. The last piece that is kind of a control-y, disrupt-y piece is going to be the enchantment that I'm running, Infernal Darkness. Now, Infernal Darkness is kind of like Blood Moon in black.
Yeah.
Cumulative upkeep, black, and 1 life, and it says all mana-producing lands produce black mana instead of their normal mana. So this can be good for... The game has gone on for a little bit. Maybe the board is getting established, and I can use this kind of to just give myself a breather, slow my opponents down for maybe a couple of turns. They can maybe get some things on the board, they can cast some artifacts or whatever, but they're not going to be able to cast things quite as effectively, and it's not going to impact me in the slightest, because I'll still be able to spend my mana as though it were mana of any color. And it's just going to eat some removal that could otherwise go for my commander, because again, it's another enchantment, so it's something that's going to force somebody to burn an enchantment removal on that Infernal Darkness, so I like that in there too. Recursion. Okay, so Recursion, I'm only running only 2 pieces that recur for me specifically. I have a few pieces that recur a little bit more broadly. A simple reason for that, billionaires, they don't care about recycling. They don't need to make do with what they have. They can just buy something new. And in the same vein, I'm not looking backwards too much, unless it means that I'm stripping your small graveyard business for parts to maximize my shareholder value. So when it's time to pull off a little vulture capitalism, I turn to cards like Author of Shadows, which exiles graveyards.
Yep. 4 and 1 black, 3/3 Shade Warlock. When Author of Shadows enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. Choose a non-land card exiled this way. You may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you can spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. Yikes.
So it's a little sad that you exile all of their graveyards, but you only get to keep one thing. But it can still be very effective to get rid of that many cards from people's graveyards, especially if they're a deck that needs to be able to access those. A couple more recursion pieces. Geth, Lord of the Vault, is kind of a neat one that I've had for a while. He lets me get artifacts and creatures from my opponent's graveyard to the battlefield. He can cast them from their graveyard, and then he mills them. So he's going to set me up to get additional permanents. But it's just a piece that's going to be able to consistently be pulling things out of my opponent's graveyards and help me build up my 3 count for my Mind Flayer. Next piece I'll mention, this one is actual recursion for me. Breach the Multiverse is a sorcery for 5 black. It says everyone mills 10, and then I get to reanimate a creature from each graveyard, and they become Phyrexians in addition to their...
Or Planeswalker.
Or Planeswalker. Oh gosh, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I've considered running that in supervillains, but
it's a strong card. I mean, it's a very strong card, and the mill 10 is nice, honestly, considering a couple different things between Geth, Lord of the Vault, being able to grab things, and other things that I've got caring about, exiling graveyards. That's just fueling me. It's just getting future turns better and readier.
More!
Similar to Breach the Multiverse, maybe the original, is Sepulchral Primordial from back in the Return to Ravnica block. It's a 5 black creature. When it enters the battlefield, I reanimate a creature from each opponent's graveyard. So boom, there. That's really good. 3 creatures, 3 permanents that I control that my opponents own can activate my Mind Flayer with the Sepulchral Primordial. This piece would probably also be considered as a mass disruption, I think, pretty fairly so. Sheoldred, the Whispering One. What a Sacky stacks? That's what I was trying to say, yeah.
Sack and stack.
Little yakety sacks on our hacky sack. But it's going to be making my opponent sacrifice creatures on their upkeeps, and then on my upkeep I get to reanimate a creature. So again, ties in nicely, synergizes nicely with stuff like Turgid, gonna spook folks. Real dirty stuff, but that's what happens. And then the last piece that's also recursion is Rise of the Dark Realms. For 7 black, it's a sorcery that returns all creatures from all graveyards to the battlefield under your control. And 9 mana is a lot of mana, but not in this deck. This deck is built to hit that, no probs.
Gotta buy up all that real estate and just sit on it.
Just gotta sit on it. We're gonna profit, Question mark, step, profit. There we go. So yeah, lots of good pieces there that all kind of tie nicely together. Rise of the Dark Realms is gonna take advantage of the milling that I'm doing with Geth, Lord of the Vault as well, and anything else that's happening to just try and get that value. Protection, only running 2 pieces that really fit protection in this deck. The first one is Malakir Rebirth, which is a NDFC. So the back side is a tapped land at Malakir Mire, but the front side for black, an instant target creature gains. You lose 2 life, and then target creature, when it dies this turn, returns the battlefield under your control. And then the other piece that I'm running that I would consider protection, but it's also kind of a win condition in its own right, with everything else that I'm doing, is a Chroma's Memorial. A Chroma's Memorial is an artifact for 7. It's a legendary artifact. It says creatures you control have flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, and protection from red and protection from black. So a whole bunch of really good, really relevant abilities that are going to make it a lot easier for the creatures that I'm stealing to get back at those owners and hit for damage. So pretty solid there. As far as mana base, the deck's got 35 lands, but as I mentioned, I've got a lot of pieces that are ramping me. So 35 is fine. Of that, 23 of them are basic swamps. So not super complicated. The big hitters I've already mentioned in the ramp section as well. As far as miscellaneous, anything I haven't really mentioned yet, just kind of a small evasion package that I have in the deck, really for enabling Mind Flayer to get in for some commander damage, and also to enable, again, when I hit that Rise of the Dark Realms and have just a massive board, to be able to get those get that damage in. Obviously the Akrum's Memorial does a lot of that. Another one is Rogue's Passage. That's a land I hadn't mentioned, but it's got an ability to make a creature unblockable if you pay 4 and tap it. Whisper Silk Cloak is going to give something Shroud and unblockable. Pretty solid. Defiler of Flesh, I mentioned that when you cast a black permanent spell, it's going to give target creature you control +1/+1 menace, so a little bit of evasion. And then probably the best option for evasion, especially for the whole board, is going to be Intimidation, which is a neat enchantment.
Got that right here. It's an enchantment for 2 generic and 3 black pips, so again, playing into that devotion.
Yep.
Creatures you control can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and black creatures.
Right.
So
really solid, and it plays nicely too with Akrum's Memorial, because then the only thing that can block is going to be artifact creatures. And it even takes the black creatures off there, since it would have protection from those. Options for closing out the game. Again, like I said, that's mostly going to be commander damage or big board state, and just taking everybody down is the goal. Possibly a Grey Merchant in there. Maybe a Lucky Keen Duelist snipe. We'll see. Synergies
or Sign in Blood.
Yeah, maybe a Sign in Blood. Hey, fingers crossed. If you're gonna do it with a cool card like Sign in Blood. Let's see. Synergies and combos. Really, this is not a synergy. This is not a combo deck. I would say that the whole deck is really synergy towards a singular goal, which is making enough mana to cast everything I can steal from my opponents, and so that it does that quite well. As far as notable exclusions, not really sure. I didn't really compare my deck to a lot of other versions of Mind Flayer. I felt like I was finding the thread that I wanted for this one, and I have no regrets.
Thread it you have, sir.
Yes.
It's very effective. Having played against it several times.
As far as weaknesses and challenges, honestly, as you know, Taryn, I built this deck quite a while ago. I would say maybe a couple of years ago, frankly. That would seem right to me. I rarely play it, and haven't showcased it up until this point for a very simple reason, and that's that it doesn't play over webcam very well. When you're stealing a card from the bottom of your opponent's library, every end step,
face down,
right? So your opponents can't see it.
Yeah.
They can't see the card that you stole from them. They aren't supposed to see the cards you stole from anyone else either. So there's not a really good opportunity to try and reveal that on webcam without kind of losing some of the element of fun.
It's a logistical nightmare.
Yeah. So the fact that we're doing some in-person streams and we're doing some in-person deck techs seemed like the right time to showcase it.
Perfect opportunity. Yep.
So yes, so what I will say is the deck does sometimes have the tendency to become a bit of an arch enemy at the table. I'm not completely certain that I could say accurately what challenges it's going to face, although facing off against your supervillains, I think they might give me a run for my money. But I've got enough dark money that hopefully I won't have to run too far. So, but really, that's dark money. That's the vibe that I'm trying to bring here. With that being said, really appreciate you checking out this deck tech video. If you liked what you saw and you want to hear what Terran's Supervillains deck is all about, check out the link below and watch that video.
Yeah.
And then not too long down the line, we're going to be streaming, playing those decks, plus a couple of
other
to be announced evil decks to fill out that pod with some pain and problems, probably.
Oh boy, evil all around.
Yeah. I don't know if they're quite as evil as Dark Money, but I'm sure they'll try.
Or we could have 2 good decks.
Oh, maybe that would be
a force of good. Good versus evil. Man, that's an idea.
Interesting.
But we'll have to see. You'll find out.
Opportunities.